And hello, everybody. Welcome back to the conversation series. I am thrilled today to have Christy McCaffrey here with me. She's the owner of Be the Good Media. She's the host of Be the Good podcast. And then she's the nonprofit founder of Project Scleroderma. And so I'm so excited to have her here with me because we're going to jump into each of these projects with her. So, Christy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure. I'm really happy to be here. And hello to all the listeners. Thank you for that intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's it in a nutshell. Those are the things that I'm currently working on. And I'm also a wife and a mom to 3 kids. That's the things I would add in there.
There you go. I just first want to hop into Be the Good Media as the first of your projects to jump into. First, what led to Be the Good Media be established, and what's the creation story there?
So the truth is, that kind of comes a little bit further in the story,
Okay.
to be honest, in terms of Project Scleroderma, the
Yeah.
podcast, and Be the Good Media.
Yeah.
So if that's okay, I'll go backward.
Let's start there. Let's start with Project Scleroderma.
I started Project Scleroderma in 2011 after losing my mom to a rare autoimmune disease called scleroderma. And it's a very hard word to say.
Tongue twister. I'm not
I
gonna.
know. I say it as much as I can so that people know what it is, but I don't fault anyone for not being able to
I
say
was
that.
I was practicing before I got on. I was like repeating it, repeating it. I was like, it's a hard one to say.
It's a very tricky word to say, but it actually means hard skin
Okay.
in Greek. So it's basically an autoimmune disease that causes a hardening of the connective tissue in your body. And that manifests in a range of different symptoms that can be very debilitating, can be mildly annoying, and in between. They basically say you could line up 10 different patients that have this disease and you'd see it manifest in 10 different ways.
Yeah.
So it really can be very serious, but for some people, they can live a very long time and manage it well with the treatments that are now available. So, and a lot has changed since my mom passed away in 2009, a lot of positive things in terms of treatment and research. But so she died in 2009 from this disease. I was inspired to do something to raise awareness for it. We sort of were blindsided by it. We didn't know what it was. Even when she passed, we were left with very little information about what it was. And I found out through my own research that there are hundreds of thousands of people suffering from this disease, but the majority of our population had never heard of it. So I actually at the time was a hairstylist. That was my first career. And I had been in that career setting since I was in high school. So I loved that world. But when my mom passed, I really was left wanting to do something. And at the time, I was very into watching documentary films. And I thought this would be a great vehicle to help raise awareness. What if we gave patients living with this disease the platform to tell their story? And so I reached out to 2 friends of mine who had just graduated from a university here in Pennsylvania with their film degrees, and they had started a production company. I said, would you make this film with me? So long story short, we did launch that very first film after doing a crowdfunding campaign. We were lucky enough to get Bob Saget on board to narrate the film. He lost his sister to this disease. It really is, there's much more to that story, but I won't go into it now. It was a real grassroots effort that was kind of incredible that we were able to even pull off. But we did, and we created a feature-length documentary film. And I'd say in that process, I was really motivated to stick with film and producing because I just loved it. And I loved being able to tell these stories and connect an audience with an important cause. I just really enjoyed that process. And at the time I was starting to have my children. So when we launched that first film, my oldest son was about to be born.
Okay.
And then I had 2 more after that. But basically it was a turning point for me. And I made the choice to stop doing hair, to focus just on Project Scleroderma and be with my kids. So We have spent the past 13 years now creating documentary style films and videos to raise awareness for that disease. So that's Project Scleroderma.
Got it.
And somewhere about 3 years ago, I felt the call to want to connect with other do-gooders, people that were out there wanting to make an impact in the world. Um, and so I started a podcast like yourself.
Love it.
And yeah, that was a passion project. That was just something that I was doing out of my basement on Zoom. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Every single conversation I would get off the call and be like buzzing with
It's
purpose and passion.
incredible. I say all the time to people, I'm like, I will be having sometimes a bad day, and then I'll go into a conversation, I'll come out and be like, I can conquer the world now,
So
and I
true.
feel amazing.
It's so true. And I can even go into a conversation feeling pretty crappy, actually, like just having a bad day, not looking forward to it, if I push myself through that, I still leave the call every time feeling like I'm on top of the world.
Yes.
It's
I get
amazing.
to I get to Fridays sometimes and I'm like, why did I schedule a recording on a Friday when I
Yeah.
am just absolutely at the end of the week just dead? I'm like, I don't know why I decided to do this, but then I get off and I'm like, okay, great. That was a great way to get into my weekend.
It's amazing what it does for you. And I know it's not for everybody. I don't know that everybody would feel that way because
Yes.
some people don't enjoy having these type of conversations or having to be on Zoom or the pressure of recording. But yeah, like, similar to you, I really do enjoy it. And so after a few seasons, I and with my production partners, we had always been talking about what if we did what we've done for Project Scleroderma for other causes? What if we took, all the things we've learned, all the compassion driven storytelling pieces that we've created here with Project Scleroderma, what if we did that for other causes? So Be the Good Media basically was born out of those two concepts of the desire to shed light on more causes and use our production skills
Yep.
and resources to do that, combined with I was loving the podcast and interviewing all of these people. So Be the Good Media was born in January of 2023, and it is a vehicle for us to help amplify the missions of other organizations and really anybody that's out there doing something impact driven. So it doesn't need to be a nonprofit, but we do primarily work with nonprofits.
With Project Scleroderma, I mean, that's you're in nonprofit is a hard place to be.
Yes.
It's I'm sure you've got your elevator pitches down for all these different times. Um, but especially regarding funding and resourcing for producing, I mean, you guys have done three major projects and that are still going on. What are kind of some of the challenges that you faced in this nonprofit sector of making sure that you are able to get these stories out and the quality is still great quality?
That's a great question. And the truth is, it was very challenging for me along the way because, as I said, I was coming out of a career that was completely different. I mean, not different in the sense that it's still a creative, uh,
Yes.
endeavor, but running the nonprofit is very different. And I, didn't go to school for nonprofit management. I don't have any sort of background in that. So there were a lot of hurdles that I had to overcome. And honestly, a lot of them were my own self-limiting beliefs
Okay.
that I would be in a room with other nonprofit executives. You name yourself the executive director of an organization and you start acting as such, but you definitely have like that imposter syndrome of, well, these people really know what they're doing. And what am I doing here? So I had to overcome a lot of that. But the truth is, I just kept coming back to the fact that my passion was my, credential,
Yeah.
basically. My passion for this patient population, my passion for finding new and creative ways to raise awareness kept me going. But yeah, there's a lot of hurdles. The nonprofit world is tricky because it's not it's like a normal business in some ways and not like a normal business in a lot of ways. So just sort of navigating how to run a nonprofit and to your point, funding. So we're a little different in the sense that we don't do a ton of fundraising, traditional fundraising. We tend to source our funds through grant sponsorships
Okay.
to produce the film. So usually we'll partner with like a pharmaceutical company that's in the space of treating scleroderma patients and who want to support patient advocacy type projects like ours. And that has worked very well because production's not cheap. And
Uh-huh.
we're traveling to all these different patients and spending days at a time with them, and then just actually having to edit and produce something when it's all said and done is not easy to do on a really small budget. So I've been very grateful that we were able to sort of find that lane, which we did find that lane pretty early on. So that has been what's sustained us over the past 13 years. And we do some fundraising, to help boost the videos. The world we live in now, it's like you can't just, back when we started, I could put a video on Facebook and it would get hundreds of thousands of views organically
Yes.
over,
Yes.
like, wild. And then we started to see like, okay, that's not really working. And then you realize you really do have to set aside a budget to push these videos. So now we've grown to a point where we have a digital marketing budget that goes to an expert-led digital marketing team that makes sure that our videos get views, that they get engagement. Because what's the point, right? What's the point in going through all of this and then not getting eyes on the videos, which awareness is our main purpose. So yeah, that's kind of how we've worked it over the years. And it's different than your traditional nonprofit structure. And I'm the only person that's technically running the nonprofit. I have a board who I run everything by. And but other than that, I hire people as we need them, like the digital marketing team or anybody that we need for like accounting services and stuff like that.
I call it going back to the digital marketing, I call it the digital jungle now because I'm like, good luck trying to figure out where everything needs to be posted because like you were saying, I've heard so many people say we used to be able to put it on Facebook and it'd get so many hits and views. And I'm like, now there are too many platforms to be like, what is the best avenue? What's the best place for us to share these things out? Where, what format? I'm like, there's too many now at this point.
Yeah, we've had to definitely do some like market research in that sense of figuring out where our patient population lives the most on those social platforms so that they'll share the content that we put out there. And so my advice to people has always been figure that out, like figure out where your true target audience is, and then only choose a couple that you're going to be on. Like we're really only on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, truly those are the main, and YouTube, I'm sorry. So YouTube is the hub for all of our videos. And so we do digital marketing spend there, but yeah, you really need to be strategic about where you're putting your energy into, or otherwise you will be completely depleted and you'll feel like you're running in place.
I worked in healthcare for 3 years and it was so funny because I think now as we've gotten every year there's a new social platform. TikTok is like the thing now where people are on. But when you're in healthcare and you're thinking about it, Facebook just doesn't seem like the place or the energy spend, but you turn around and you're like, to your point, that's where patients are. That's where people are the most, depending on that demographic. Like that's where you're going to reach them. But as we get farther into this digital world, everybody's like, Facebook, really? And I'm like, yep.
Well, that's where they're communicating with each other a lot. I know that many patients in the scleroderma population have found a lot of connection and comfort through Facebook groups and Facebook conversations. And it is interesting because like I'm not on Facebook at all anymore. If it weren't for running Project Scleroderma, I wouldn't have it at all. Like it's just that has phased out for me. But there are still lots of people on there. And to your point, in the healthcare space, that is where you're going to find people having conversations related to healthcare.
My mom says to me all the time, she's on Facebook and she tags me in all of this stuff. And she's like, "You never respond." I'm like, "I'm never on Facebook anymore." I'm like, it is not my platform anymore that I am on. So I
It's
go,
funny though, because they're like our parents' generation is very much so still on Facebook. But
yes.
I think the younger generation has kind of started to step away from it. And yes, they're like, why didn't you respond? I didn't see it.
I am not on Facebook as much as you are anymore.
We're
Um,
elsewhere. It's not like we're not on social media. We're just somewhere else.
yes, we're just around the corner somewhere. Um, I do want to go to Be the Good Media, and you were talking about it. There's kind of four sectors you guys focus on in terms of, you were saying nonprofits, but then you do education, healthcare, sports and recreation, all these different things. I just want to talk to you about, you said you focus on nonprofit. Have there been knocks on the door to say, "Hey, Christy, can you guys help us? That's a little bit outside here
Yes.
with
Yeah.
some
So I
with
mean,
some
like I said, we tend to work with nonprofits, but we're certainly not saying we only work with nonprofits. For me, it needs to be what I'm a little choosy in the projects that we decide to work on, because I want to make sure that it really aligns with the mission and values that we've set for Be the Good Media. And for me, that means that it needs to be something that's positively impacting the world in some way, even if it's just your community, um, even if it's just like a smaller subset of people, that's fine. I just want to make sure that like we're creating content that is impact driven and helping make a positive drop in the world. So we have had some B Corps that we've worked with, or businesses that, aren't a B Corp or aren't a nonprofit, but have this purpose-driven mission to make a difference. And so they exist, yes, in our client base. But I would say over the past year, the majority of our projects, like you said, sports and recreation, we did a video for an organization here in Philadelphia that serves as like a backbone organization for 80 different organizations within the city that are serving the youth by way of sports programs. And they're trying to get quality sports programs to all children equally in the city. So that was a really fun project to work on. And as we were talking about, like that feeling that we walk away from when we're on a podcast interview, that has translated over to me now in these Be the Good Media projects. When I walk away from a project like that, and we spent 2 days filming different camps that the kids were in. We do a day of sit down interviews with the staff and whatnot, and learn more about their mission and their why. But being out there in the camps with the kids was so invigorating. We also did a project recently with a school that's local that works with children who have autism. And oh, it was such a special place, and they're doing like amazing things. And I didn't want to leave when we were done filming with them. So that's basically I want to work on projects that are pulling me towards them, not forcing things or trying to, work on things just so that we have a job, you know? I really want to work on projects that I feel pulled towards, and that at the end of the day, I'm going to feel really proud that we were a part of creating that, and helping that organization. And now the podcast has transitioned out of my basement into a podcast studio. We're in like a legit situation, which is really exciting because I dreamed of that.
Yes.
We're going into my 9th season now. So for 9 seasons, I have been, and I say seasons, it's 10 episodes per season, but this has been over 3 years that I've been doing it. And I have been dreaming, this is wild. I have to share this with you because I think you'll appreciate it from the podcast perspective. In my basement, I just kept saying, like, one day I would love to be on a set in a studio, like with a full production crew, like actually recording and filming these interviews. And I had envisioned in my mind these like green couches, like a white fluffy rug. I had a whole idea in my head of what it would look like.
Yes.
So when my team and I decided it was time to move into that direction, like let's
Yeah.
level things up with the production of the podcast, I was Googling local places and came across this one that seems like it would be a good fit. I schedule a walkthrough. I walk in. The set was exactly what I had envisioned. I am recording my podcast now on these emerald green couches,
Oh my.
white fluffy rug. I almost fell over. I'm like, what? This is it. This is exactly what so that's been a really cool experience. But my point in telling you that we shifted to that now is that I also really use the podcast now more in collaboration with the company. So a lot of my guests are clients of mine or potential clients of mine, or, so I like being able to give the clients that we're working with this added value of
Yes.
marketing. So they're on the podcast and they get to be a guest, and we do all sorts of things with that. But then while they're in studio, we also give them the opportunity to record some social media clips and things like that for their own use. So it's been exciting to see the podcast grow in that way, and to be able to work with these clients that I feel so good when we're done after having worked with them.
It's like the elongating of the storytelling is what's happening. Is like you're going and doing this massive project with them. Here's a podcast episode, here's other things. It's beautiful to see that full thread, but I love that what you envisioned came to life because I mean, I'm in my home, I'm recording this with you, but like last year I made it my goal. I'm like, people who are here in Raleigh, I want it to be an opportunity that I offer it and we sit down in person. And I did the 100th episode earlier this year, did it in person. I was like,
Congrats.
thank you. This is my fifth season. And so I do it the full year, but it's one of those that I was like, my 100th episode, I want to do this with a live audience. Did it with a live audience, and I was like, I went home and I was like, I just cried because I was like, that feeling that it finally had happened. I was so emotionally spent. I was like, I did it. But it was, you know what I mean? I was like, I came out of that and I was like, all right, let's go do more. I want to go do more live episodes. So I went, I'm like, how can I learn from this? Learn from other people that are throwing events. But this has been the greatest blessing venue for me to
Oh,
be
I'm
able
so happy for you because I know that feeling. It's just like I did it. And I did. And listen, when I'm talking about the nonprofit journey and all the challenges, there's a lot of challenges that come along with producing a podcast that people don't realize, especially because you and I started when podcasting was like kind of new still, I don't know about you, but like I had to YouTube a ton of stuff to just figure out what I was doing. And so when you go through all of those hurdles, and then you accomplish a goal you had for it, it is, you can't help but like sob.
Yes.
I did this, and I'm excited for you that you did the live because that's on my list. I definitely want to do it with a live audience. And I'll tell you that being in person with the audience, I mean with my guest now, is way different and in a much better way. Like I don't mind this at all, like, speaking from a distance, because it does allow you to talk to people that aren't local, which is great. But there is something to be said for having a conversation when you're there in person.
Yep.
I think the conversation, like I get more out of it,
Yep.
honestly.
It's funny because I describe it a lot and people kind of look at me like, oh, you're a spiritual person. I'm like, I'm really not, but I'm like, you feel each other's energy, and when you're doing that, the conversation goes a lot differently when you're in person. And so I'm like, it's a real energy pull between people because you're like, you have a list of questions, you have topics you want to talk about, but I'm like, you might completely pivot and just not pay attention and go in a completely different direction than
So
you would when you're on a Zoom conversation.
that's so true.
And I love it. And I love doing in person. I do want to just ask you the question of, this wasn't your career path. You've mentioned it, we've talked about it. How did you go and learn? What were some tools that you used to be able to kind of jump both feet in and say, all right, Christy, here we go. We're going to go and learn as much as we possibly can. What were those avenues, tools, things that you went and did to learn?
Yeah. So as I said, YouTube has been a huge resource of mine, and I am not ashamed to say that. I have, if I ever am like, how do I set this up? I mean, even as a producer, like how do I don't know, make this happen, make that happen. Like with the podcast, definitely I was YouTubing, how to use the equipment, what's the right equipment to get. Um, but I would say from the beginning, I've been very fortunate that, my production partners and everybody I've worked with in the production space has been so generous to me with just being willing to teach me. And I am a forever learner. I want to learn new things. I want to, I like making myself uncomfortable and then like growing past it. So thankfully has always been my approach is I have this really strong belief in myself, and I've had it since I was a little girl, that like if I want to do something, I'm going to figure out how to do it and nothing's going to stop me. So I just set about finding the resources. I've read a lot. Um I've watched and listened to a million different podcasts on certain things, but really I think it comes down to just like throwing yourself into it and being willing to not be perfect at it, with being willing to ask questions, and a little bit of faking it till you make it. I've definitely had to do a lot of that over the past decade. And it's great because now I feel like I'm finally in a position where I don't feel like I'm trying to prove anything to anybody. I think I don't have a full college degree. And that again was this like, a little bit of a limiting belief for me over the years was, who am I to be doing these things? And I don't have a degree and I don't have all this experience in production. I didn't go to school for it. I don't have the degree in nonprofit and I didn't go to school for it, but I finally have overcome all of those things. And I think it's amazing now to be in a place where I can say and look back and say, like, you did it. You created something, even though you had all these hurdles in the way. And even though you didn't really truly have the experience. But here's the thing. I think no matter what we're doing and no matter what degrees you hold, there
Right.
is still this process that has to happen where you learn in the process.
Yeah.
Like I always say, I'm like, I don't have this, these serious, impressive college degrees, but like I have a whole lot of real world experience, like a
Yeah.
lot. And that has carried me. And again, like my passion has carried me. And I think my desire to learn and my willingness to learn and to put myself in uncomfortable positions has served me really well. And the last thing I'll say is networking. I, especially stepping into Be the Good Media, was the first time that I really saw how beneficial networking is. I think we all understand networking is important. And when you run a business, or whatever field you're in, networking with other people is important. But it really sunk in for me when I started Be the Good Media in January of 23. I just said to myself, like, you are going to we didn't have any jobs booked, it was dependent on me to pull them in.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm just going to get out there. So I went to like every live in-person networking thing I could in Philadelphia in this past year. I am on LinkedIn and constantly reaching out to people, making connections, and it served me really well. Like this, I don't think we would have had the projects we've had in the past year if it wasn't for the fact that I just had this like hustle in me
Yeah.
to network.
Yeah.
And so that really has been a big piece of the puzzle.
It's so funny because people will say to me, I've been singing network from the top of the tallest building since I was in college. I'm like, LinkedIn, get on there. It's so funny now that people are like, well, networking is so diluted. There's so many people are using networking. And I'm like, okay, but it doesn't have to fall into this category of a bad thing. Now I'm like, networking serves a purpose no matter what title it has on it. And it's so important.
And I always encourage people to look at it this way too, that just having conversation with someone, you don't know what could come out of that. I almost never say no to somebody that reaches out and wants to get coffee or meet or talk, even if I think I don't see how we would have anything come out of this, you know, or anything would come out of this for me. But still, I always end up in the conversation, like, even if it's just like you see something differently after the conversation, or they may not be able to help you, or they may not be able to work with you, but they know somebody that can.
Yeah.
You know, like conversation is just, that's what I have found to be so valuable about networking, is that you'll always get something out of it if you go into it with that attitude.
I do want to dive into part of Be the Good Media. You're a woman tribe. You guys are a woman tribe. I just want to dive into that decision, you and your production partners. I think it's sometimes talked about being a woman-led company and business, but I just want to hear why that decision, why you guys went and said we're a woman tribe here.
So I will say we're not all women. It's, and my team is not all women, although it's a little bit like in my plan to become
Oh,
more women.
yes.
um, but I'll say we started it off. My production partners are men, mainly, and my two partners in the business are men. But when we decided to do this, and they have their own production company, so when we decided to do this, it was really, I say I give credit to them, the fact that they were like, you should do this, like that you should take this on as your thing now. And it's not that I hadn't thought of doing that, but it, when they suggested it, I was like, yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
Christy, I should.
should. And it has been very empowering for me to finally be in a space where I feel like I've got something that is,
That's awesome.
I'm at the helm of. I was at the helm of the nonprofit for all these years, but at the end of the day, it's, that nonprofit is not about me. That's about a patient community that I'm serving. And even now, this company is not about me. This company is about the people that I'm serving, but I get to really choose, like I was telling you earlier, the projects that we take on, and I get to be very selective about who I want to work with. You know, I don't have employees at the moment. I work all with freelance production crew.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of the same people at the moment, but you know, just having the ability to say, like, I just had a meeting recently with another female producer, and I've been trying, that's part of my networking goals, is, you know, networking with more females in the production space. And truth be told, the production world has been very male based. I don't want to say dominant, but it's just,
It's
it's
true.
been mainly men in the production space. And, you know, that's starting to change, but I want to make more space for women. I want to find ways to just bring more women into the fold. So when I'm working on a project, I am thinking, like, is there a female DP that I could work with? Is there a female production assistant, audio person? Um, the editor I work with mainly is a female. So I'm very conscious of that because it matters to me. I mean, at the end of the day, that's my answer, is that it matters. It matters that women support other women, and that we see more women doing jobs that we haven't necessarily thought of them doing in the past. And so it's very important to me. I mean, we're also in a space where, like, some jobs are getting thrown my way just because I'm a woman
Yeah.
owned business. And I'm all right with that. You know, because that's cool. I'm happy to take those jobs on. And but really it's about the intention of making more space for other females and wanting to work with other females. And I think as we were talking about the energy, like the energy for me is different when I'm creating something with another female. I have just seen that that's like, it's just different, and I like it. And it doesn't mean that I'll stop working with men or that I don't enjoy working with men creatively. But yeah, it's just about making more space and having more of that in the production world. But also I think I just love that we're in a time right now where women are so eager to support each other. Women are so eager to see another woman thrive. And we know it's like, what is it? A rising tide lifts all boats. Like, this is a moment for us to
100%.
show up for ourselves and for each other, and to just make more space, cheer each other on, uh, and just create more of an energy, as we keep talking about
Yeah.
energy,
Yes.
but more of an energy with each other that's supportive, as opposed to, um, I think women had to fight for things for so long because there was only one spot for a female. So you'd have 10 females fighting each other for that one spot. And now I think we see like, no, 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 we need to make the space. We need to take the table and decide the seats and choose to bring more women in with us. And that's what you're seeing happening now. And so I'm so encouraged by that.
I want to hop into your approach to storytelling and really storytelling in your documentaries. How do you, in your mind, ensure that you are saying, okay, we're ticking this box, we're ticking this box, but really resonating deeply with the patients of Project Scleroderma and a broader audience to make sure, like, hey, we are grabbing people's attention, but we're also getting the point across of the importance of this?
Delicate balance that we've definitely worked hard on over the years to make sure that we're giving the educational pieces about the disease, because at the end of the day, it's about awareness. Uh, but if I'm being honest, I lead with compassion driven storytelling. I want to see the human side of the person whose story we're telling, not just the facts on paper about the disease that's unfortunately, affecting their life.
Yes.
So I have really been intentional, and our team has been very intentional about creating a space for every single patient and their family when we're filming with them, to let them understand that we're really here for you to feel seen and heard and validated in this really hard thing you're dealing with. And it is a skill that I've had to build to really hold space for
Yes.
these stories, and was coming off the heels of losing my mom to this same disease. So in the beginning, that was very hard to sit and hear someone pour their heart out about this disease that had just killed my mom, and not like automatically want to change the subject or like move on to the next question. So I had to learn how to do that. And as I learned how to do that, I realized like people just need to be listened to with compassion. People really just want to know that you care, and they need to get it off their chest. And so what's been beautiful in this experience with Project Scleroderma is that every single person we've worked with over the past 13 years, we go into it with them, and you can tell that they're maybe a little nervous or their family's a little guarded, and understandably so. But by the end of the weekend that we're done with them, they're like a different person. And they're like, this changed my life. I just feel, I think they're just getting something huge off their chest. And they're finally finding the courage to speak about what they've been dealing with. And it's very empowering for them to know that it's now going to be shared as a tool to make a difference. And so, compassion driven storytelling is the thing I say is our niche, both with Project Scleroderma and Be the Good. And what that really means is just being able to hold space for any story that someone's sharing with you, but especially the heavier ones, and let the story, breathe, let the story be what it is. Now, we also try to make sure that they're like hopeful and inspirational. We don't ever really want to tell a story that's just like sad and depressing. And there's elements of it that are sad and depressing, and that's the reality. And we do have to show that, but we have to balance it with, I'll be asking the patients questions like, okay, so like, what have you learned through this process of having scleroderma? What has it taught you about yourself? And oh, the answers are just amazing, because they're able to see like there are things that I've gotten out of this process, as hard as it is, that have been valuable to me in my perspective of life. Or, what are the things you love to do that, don't the disease doesn't define you? What are the things that define you, that really make you you, and that you love to do? So always trying to find that balance between like hope and inspiration, getting the facts straight and getting them out there, and also like letting the heavy, hard moments be there too.
I would assume it would be difficult with your story or not sitting there and just listening to all the things that these people have gone through. I couldn't imagine just sitting there and having to, because I mean, you're fully watching emotions happen too and everything that they're feeling. And I can only imagine how much you feel that inside yourself too, because that's heavy stuff to be hearing these people's journeys and what they've gone through.
I've definitely had to do some protective measures for myself over the years to not completely take it on. And I'm an empathetic person. That's kind of been my struggle my whole life. Is like you care too much and then
Yes.
you take other people's stuff on and it's not yours to carry. And so just finding that balance, it's been a great experience for me in that sense of learning how to do that. Like let their moment happen and let them feel what they need to feel, but it doesn't mean you have to pick it up and hold it for them. And you don't have to keep it so close to your heart. I meditate a lot. And I'll say that that has been a huge blessing for me in all of this and has allowed me to kind of give myself more space. It just clears my mind. When we're on uh, location with a patient, like I do a lot of meditating before we go in, a lot of meditating after. And it's tricky too, because my mom died from this disease. I'm sort of predisposed to autoimmune disease because of my genetics. My mom and my grandmom, her mom, both died from autoimmune diseases. So it's tricky for me too to hear all these things. And then sometimes I'll get myself in a panic of like,
Yes.
is this going to happen to me? And I don't want to feel that way. I'm there to be there for the person. I shouldn't be thinking about worrying about myself. But so there's a lot that I've had to learn in the way of not holding on to everybody's emotions and holding them too close to my own heart.
I both my grandmothers have battled, they are still here, have battled breast cancer. And my grandfather's had cancer, so we have cancer in the family. So it's one of those that I myself have battled that my doctors are like, we're going to have to start scanning you earlier than what they typically say because we just want to make sure that, if it has traveled down, we want to catch it as fast as we possibly can. But much like yourself, I'm thinking I'm going to have breast cancer one day. It's just because it's been in my family. So I've always kind of thought it's going to happen to me at some point in my life. And so for me, I've been like, you know what? If it happens, like it sounds kind of childish to say it, but I'm like, if it happens, it happens. But I'm like, I've had to learn I can't let my life completely halt because
Totally.
I'm so scared that that's going to happen. I'm like, if it happens, there is so much great research out there now. There's so many different treatments.
That's the blessing. And I think that is how I've tried to flip it in my own head. Cause I totally hear you on, you go down this path of like, well,
Yes.
clearly it's eventually something's going to happen to me. And, the likelihood of me getting scleroderma is not very high, but the likelihood of me getting a different type of autoimmune disease kind of is. So you go through all of these things but I flip it and I try to look at it as how lucky we are to know what we know. Right. Okay. You already know you are potentially predisposed to this because of your genetics. Well, you're going to be hyper aware of it. It
Oh yeah.
doesn't mean that you can't stop it from happening. However, I do think that there's plenty of like lifestyle things that we can do that can help better our chances of not running into, disease that has been in our family before us. But to your point, there's more research, there's more. So if you are looking for it and you're aware of it, if something is to surface, you'll know exactly what to do. You'll know where to go. You'll know how to get the treatment that you need. And I just try to remind myself, it's not healthy to even say to yourself like, oh, I'm probably going to get it. Like, don't even go there,
Yeah.
because you might not. And something one of my doctors said to me early on, because right after my mom passed, I was sort of in this major spiral
Okay.
of fear and panic about it. My mom and I look a lot alike. We were built the same. I was just kind of like, okay, what does this mean? But my doctor said to me, like, you've got your dad's genetics in you too. Like, right. Because didn't really think of that. He's like, I mean, you're not like gonna live the exact same course your mom did. Like, don't do that to yourself. And I
Yes,
was like,
like hello, still here.
oh, right. Okay. Yep. I got it. And one of the other things that he said to me was, it's something in your environment that will trigger for me, for autoimmune disease, that will trigger your predisposition to it. So your environment, not just being what's around you and outside of you, but your environment internally. And he really made an impression on me that, finding ways to counteract your stress is so important. And that has been something that really stuck with me. And I have tried very hard over the past decade to counteract my stress, because a lot of the disease that we see now across the board is oftentimes triggered from stressful like circumstances, or just like a stressful lifestyle. So, and even just like the things that we eat, and that, there's so many factors that play into it, that it's not fair for us to say, well, I'm probably gonna end up with something somebody in my family did. Give yourself a little bit more credit that you might not.
Yes,
And there are some factors that we can possibly work on that could help counteract our
yes.
genetics.
I'm thinking about your dad now too. And I'm like,
Like, seriously, you're like, okay, so my mom had it, so I'm gonna have it. Duh, obviously, duh. But
yeah.
like, my dad's doing just fine right now, healthy as can be. And
Healthy
I'm
as a whistle
completely
over here.
forgetting that I've got his genes in me too.
Oh, that was good. Christy, my last question for you is just what inspires you?
What inspires me? Connecting.
Okay.
I
Oh,
think connecting with other people, and connecting in just like a really pure, good way, which
okay.
happens all the time for me with people across the board. I think we live in a time right now where it's like easy for people to just say, like, I can't even have a conversation with this person. We don't see things the same way. I try to go into every conversation and just connect with people. And I'm always inspired by that. I mean, every time I'm done with a podcast conversation, I think that's why we feel so lit up, because we're inspired, and it's that connection that just happened between us that sparked the inspiration. I mean, there's a million other things that inspire me. I'm a creative, and so I'm inspired like every other minute by lots of things. But I
Yes.
think, connection and impact, seeing the world, or seeing things happen in the world that are a reflection of like the world I'd like to see, is inspiring to me. And I think that that's why I've chosen this path, because every project we work on, every interaction I have with the people we're interviewing or that we work with, it leaves me feeling like the world's a better place than we sometimes assume. There's a lot of really good people in this world, a lot. I'd say a lot more good than bad.
Yeah.
And we forget that sometimes. So connection sparks that reminder.
I love that. Christy, I can't thank you enough for taking the time and sitting here with me today and walking me through these projects that you're doing and your two businesses. I so appreciate it, and I love all the work that you're doing. And I'm constantly following you on LinkedIn to see whatever you are working on at the time.
I appreciate that so much. And thank you for having me on. This was so fun. I love being on the other side of the conversation, because I rarely am, but this is so fun. I appreciate it. And I will be listening to all your episodes too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And you guys, if you don't follow Christy or Be the Good Media or Project Scleroderma, I'm going to have all their socials linked down below. So please go give them a follow and see some of the stories that they're telling. But Christy, just thank you again for joining me.
Thank you.
As always, I will see you guys back here next time. Bye, y'all.